might be working now, Bill. Do you want to test that?
Listen only mode.
Well, good morning. Good morning to friends in India and good afternoon to friends in Australia, and welcome to the BDO East-West Advisors seminar on COVID and the changing landscape in India. We're really pleased that you've had the patience to stick with us during some technology issues, and we're going to proceed, and we're assuming that everything's in place. So we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers that I'll introduce shortly. But I just wanted to say at the beginning that we're all dealing with the COVID crisis, and I think India in particular is having something like 11,000, 12,000 new cases a day, which is a really concerning number. And so our hearts and thoughts go out to all our friends in India. Please stay safe, stay well, but let's stay connected as well. So we're hoping that the future improves dramatically for India. So again, welcome to the seminar. This, I think, is the third, maybe the fourth in a series that BDO and East-West Advisors have collaborated on. And we're really trying to build a community of discussion around this issue of Australian opportunities, Indian opportunities, and how we can make the most of them. So look at the great panel we've got today. We have Michelle Wade, who is the Commissioner South Asia for the Government of Victoria. And it's great to have her on the panel. And we have a Victorian Government business office in Bengaluru and Mumbai. And I've personally been helped by both of those offices, so I highly recommend it. And our second speaker will be from Mumbai, in fact, and that's Jigar Saiya, who is part of BDO. He's a partner and I think leader of tax and regulatory services in the Mumbai practice of BDO. And he is a leader, international tax coordinator in the BDO Global Network, if I'm correct. So Jigar, we look forward to your presentation and your expertise from downtown Mumbai. And if we can organise it from our end, after that we'll have Bill Cole, who is Partner International with BDO and really has been the instigator of this series of events. And final speaker will be my good mate, Michael Moyniard, who is a director of East-West Advisors and former Senior Trade Commissioner in Delhi. So for those of you who've signed into the webinar, I hope that this panel excites your interest. We've got so much that we can learn. Now, I do have a brief bit of housekeeping to do. So could we show that slide, please? So you'll see on the slide there some information about questions. You can submit questions to the questions pane at any time. And please do, and the organisers and myself will become aware of what those questions are. When and if we get the chance, we'll put those to the speakers and get an answer for you. But if we don't get an answer during the presentation, we'll get you an answer via email or some other way after the program. I should also mention that the presentation slides being used today will be available for you to access, or perhaps we're sending them to everyone. Just one way or the other, you will get those as well. After the session, yes, you will be sent an email with the presentation slides, a link to this recorded session if you want to go over it again, or access to past and future webinars by the BDO East-West Advisors group. So you'll also get our contact details and send us an email, send us a LinkedIn message. I have a blog called intoindia.blog. Please sign up for that. It's we just talk about my favourite subject, which is India-Australia relationships. So, okay, so that's the end of my introduction. If we could have, okay, we'll also be doing some polling. We want to find out what you're thinking. So during the session, we'll have some polls, and that'll be indicated to you with 3 questions. Are you currently doing business? Do you see Australia-India as a growth path? And what is the biggest challenge you see in expanding India-Australia? So start thinking about those now, but during the session, you'll be signalled on when you can click on your answers to those poll questions. And if we can, we're going to share the results during the session, otherwise we'll share them after. So let's go. Let's start exchanging information. And our first speaker, if you could change the slide, please, is Michelle Wade, who is Commissioner South Asia for the Government of Victoria. Michelle, thanks.
Great, thanks Stephen, and welcome to everyone this afternoon and this morning, so in Australia and in India. I'd also like to thank BDO for bringing us together for this continuous conversation. I think it's really important that we're not just speaking once and doing generic presentations, that we're able to get a little bit of depth behind what we do. So I was just looking back at my last presentation and what a different world that was, but how recently it was as well. I was in Melbourne in March where we had a face-to-face session. I'd just been at the T20 Women Cricket Finals, surrounded by 85,000 people and a record-breaking crowd for a sporting event, women's sporting event in Australia. The week before, we'd completed the Australia-India Business Exchange with Minister Bakula and Federal Minister for Trade Simon Birmingham. During that time, we'd launched Swiss Wellness in India, and also I'd attended an event with Shah Rukh Khan with his scholarship for La Trobe University. And within 10 days, I was back in Australia in lockdown, and welcome to this new world. I also looked back at what I presented to the audience last time. I'm not sure how much crossover we have today, but I spoke a lot about how we relate Victoria to India in market, about the size and scale issues, about the need to create relativity by states to avoid taking on India as one mighty beast, and also the growing connections and the deep connections that Australia and Victoria have through the diaspora, through its strong student relationship, and increasingly through the visitor economy as well. So I'll go to the next slide now, Kate. So this is us since March. As I said, we've faced cancellation of all travel and face-to-face meetings, you know, in person if you like. We've come to the whole new world of webinars and the like. But for us, with the relationship we have with India, one of the key issues that we're facing, and one of the sectors that I focused on last time, was the work we're doing in advanced technology, advanced engineering services, for example. So how do we manage those if we haven't got people coming in and out of the market? I was quite happy when I found this photo on the internet the other day. This lineup of very helpful people are actually our DFAT officers in New Delhi, helping Australians repatriate to Australia. So the person on the left is the newly arrived High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell, who perhaps had one of the most exciting arrivals into post of any DFAT officer I've ever known. And he's been leading around India a significant expatriation with over 6,000 people returning to Australia. So they ranged from tourists to people like me working up there, to people who might be long-term residents of India. They might be of Indian origin, but with Australian citizenship and or Australian permanent residency. So for us, those 6,000 people, what does that look like if this situation extends? Will some of those repatriated people start? Firstly, it brings a highly skilled Indo-Australian audience back to Australia, but also will we see some of those settle for the long term? Will they relocate businesses, invest in businesses? And that's some of the things that we're considering right now. Obviously, we've had significant impact on our foreign students, and that's something I'm working with currently for the state of Victoria, is supporting through our International Student Emergency Relief Fund those students, but also through those students, and the impacts that we're seeing is the enormous numbers of visiting friends and relatives and how that impacts our tourist market. I've mentioned disrupted supply chains. So we kind of anticipated that. We didn't anticipate having to get on the phone with state governments and ask them if they could give special allowances to open up factories to enable the completion of the manufacture of lids for hand sanitizer, for example, of hospital grade hand sanitizer, of the tooling that was already required in Australia to produce some of those products. And then in terms of disrupted retail, we've obviously cancelled product launches just at a point that we're starting to get interesting products into India. But also we had a period where for the work that we've done in e-commerce, a lot of the Indian retail was restricted just to essential items only. So that did cause a bit of a disruption from that respect as well. So just onto my last slide, I'll ask you to move along again, Kate. So what we've learned in these 3 months, the need for diversification of risk. I think everyone's heard a lot about that. We inherently know it. One of the things that I'd say is it's very easy right now for us in a time of, not just massive international disruption, but also the geopolitical disruption that we're facing with our relationship with China, to just cast our eyes to the other big market. India is not the complete panacea to our relationship with China. It's very different, and we're going to have to maneuver it in a different way, but it's certainly great to see us very much on the agenda and getting the sort of attention that we didn't get 5 years ago. One of the things that I've really enjoyed in working from home, and I hope you guys have noticed it too, is that whilst it's changed how we do business, it's actually enabled us to have more frequent contact with key people that I've previously found quite hard to get in contact with. So previously I might have saved a talk with someone until I was next visiting Delhi or next in Mumbai, being based in Bangalore as I generally am. But now I think, and over this period, we've all learned to be a lot more agile in our business contact. And from that perspective, I think India and Australia will be beneficiaries because we generally do business in English. There's an ease of engagement there that we're not going to find with many of the markets around the regions that we deal with. The lessons that I gave previously on thinking about India by state remains. And obviously you've also got the overlay of how states are, how open up they are at the moment as well. But I will say too, our relationships with the states actually grew at this time. And that's, as I said, because we had to contact government, we had to try to unblock some issues. And for us, the potential for new business and especially online business. So in terms of the businesses that we're looking at right now, India's always been a challenging goods market. It's price sensitive, it's highly protected, both at a federal level and at a state level. So we were already making inroads into many of these areas, but now we're just able to, if you like, turn up the volume a bit and do more. So online retail, particularly health and wellness, is one. EdTech has had a massive growth, and we've already just done a online trade fair of some of our great EdTech products, and we're starting to do some pilots with some of those products now into India. Online gaming and esports was something we were already working in, and we actually brought some of the women who came in for Global Victoria Women's Mission were in that mission, and I'll have to leave here early this afternoon to go and talk to that group again. And then, as I've left a question, advanced technical services, that's the one we had, but we're really not sure how that will go in the future. So that's it for me. I'll, if you go over to the next slide, Kate, and you'll get these slides afterwards. It's got my contact details on it. I'm an active user of LinkedIn, but don't hesitate to send me an email if you'd like to catch up further. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And as Michelle mentioned, she'll be leaving us early today, 3:45. She has another commitment. So on your behalf, I might just fire a couple of quick questions at you, Michelle, as a follow-up. The Australian store that's recently been launched by Austrade with Amazon, are you finding, or do you expect to find Victorian interest in that from the fast-moving consumer goods segment?
Absolutely, we will find interest in that, and we're very much working both with Austrade and the federal government to promote that, and I should say with Amazon also. I was in the store the other day, and actually two things that have improved from my perspective. One, it's easier to find online than it used to be. So this is giving you an indication of just how fast, how closely we're watching it. And the other thing is I was watching what products are moving. So in fact, Vegemite is the most popular product on that store right now, I can attest. But given that Victoria is Australia's major producer of processed food, and also our work in wellness, health and wellness that I've mentioned, and also clothing, will definitely be working closely with that store.
Okay, and a final quick question to you, if I may. You mentioned health and wellness. We know that in the West that's become a focus of the under 40s, the millennial generation, really. India has a huge millennial generation. And I just wondered if you thought that would be the key target for health and wellness, or is there something else?
No, I would say it's definitely that millennial market, but there's still a product for you, Stephen. We were looking at a milk formula for a range of age groups the other day, and we were suggesting that also had value in India and was worth exploring. So every product, India's a massive market. Every product you examine on its merits. So in fact, to give you an idea of the milk formula product, we were sort of saying infant formula's got some very tricky pathways to market, but maybe you should be looking at some of your other product SKUs as a first entry before you have to go through some other regs. So I'd say it's big enough for the right product at the right price to make it in, but the health and wellness is very much that target group.
Okay, so thanks so much, Michelle. We now move on to Jigar Saiya, who is BDO Mumbai. A sincere welcome to you, our new friend. And BDO, I think, has something like a dozen offices in India, and it's very big in Australia. So it's well placed to be operating across those borders. And please, we'd love to hear your presentation now.
Thanks, Stephen, thank you, Michelle, for the wonderful talk. I think there was good insights on what Victoria is looking at in India, and I always wondered whether do we have any relations apart from cricket, and I feel our business relations are much deeper than our cricket rivalries. So I think taking on to my slides and what really India is looking at the moment. Kate, if you can have the next slide. So India has entered lockdown in end of March. We entered lockdown on 24th March to be precise, and we've had 4 phases of lockdown, and now we're under one unlock phase number 1. And what we've seen throughout this lockdown is prediction about the way the economy is going. Initially, it was predicted that we might see some loss in the GDP, some degrowth, but then that was further deepened as the lockdown extended. And during the lockdown 4, there have been predictions that our GDP will in fact contract by 5%. But I think it's not all that grim. The predictions also are that our GDP, once the lockdown opens up, it will take about 3 quarters to recover, and we're likely to see V-shaped recovery. And it's likely to be a bumper growth thereafter. So it's estimated that we'll have a GDP growth of over 9% once the recovery starts. What we've seen during this lockdown is few major shifts in what are going to impact business. One, there is labor migration that is occurring, and which will now rebalance in the way India is. And effectively, labor has moved from the metro cities to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which are back to their hometown, which will now mean more opportunities for industries to set up in these tier 2 or tier 3 cities and have more labor at their disposal, which will mean essentially more effective and cost efficient way of doing business. To combine this, there are state-based incentives for these tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that should make it more attractive. I think what we also saw was a quick ramp up of the essential manufacturing of the essentials, be it sanitizers, masks, medicines. So we quickly saw the ramp ups. India, is at explosion stage of the COVID-19 situation right now. And what we've seen is the governments have been able to supplement and increase their health facilities to counter the increase. So that's what we've seen. What we also saw was policy measures that government has taken in this while to balance the economy. The FDI policies have been changed to kind of protect India's as well as not stop globalization. So we've seen a shift to being domestically self-sufficient and the thing called reliant in it. So that ways that will help promote India being self-reliant. Self-reliant, we don't mean isolated. We mean inviting for investment, but production or product. Yeah. Of course, we've seen divestment, and then I'll talk about it slightly later. But increased focus has been the technology and the healthcare sector. So that has emerged as a hero in this lockdown. Moving on to the next slide. India announced a stimulus package, which was actually. Kate, if I can go to the next slide. Yeah. So India announced a stimulus package of about 265 billion US dollars. So that's almost 10% of the GDP, last reported GDP, and it's the fifth largest stimulus package announced amongst the G20 nations. The stimulus package primarily focused on revival of medium and small and micro enterprises. So India has been focusing on these and now looking to revive this and keep the earlier slide about the stimulus package. One more. Yeah. Thank you. So I think in this, as I see on your focus has been more focused SME support, agriculture, migrant, of course, providing basics to the lower strata of the society. But yes, there has been good progress and good focus being shown on important areas like coal, defense production, civil aviation, airports, etc. So there has been significant announcements in these areas. The question always came in is that how would the Indian government fund this? With businesses looking at degrowth and taxes not being growing and degrowing of taxes, how would the Indian government fund this? So not necessarily only by printing more money, but I think they've laid down a plan, and one of the significant areas of this would be investment. It has a new policy and said that public sector undertakings would be privatized. In the policy, they've said that significant part of the government undertakings would be privatized. The government has said that it will now open up almost all sectors to the private sector, and the government will play only an important role in certain defined areas. The government said that it will notify the strategic areas, and it will have about 1 or up to 4 government enterprises, not more than that, in those areas, and the rest all opened up. So I think that's the huge announcement with opening up of a lot of public sector enterprises. There'll be a lot of opportunity to invest in some of these sectors. So that's one of the huge announcements. moving on to the next, we've seen in India, we've seen some success in India. Next slide, we see we've seen positive development on the current crisis, and this has opened up a huge opportunity for the manufacturing sector in India. The Make in India program, since it was announced, has seen reasonable success, and it has attracted FDI. In the last 6 years, we've attracted FDI of almost 46% of what we've seen in last over 20 years. So that's the difference that Make in India program has made. I think if we look at the Make in India program, it's all about increasing the manufacturing capability of India with the aim to grow this capability from 12 to 14% every year, creating 100 million jobs in the manufacturing sector, and ensure that the manufacturing sector contributes at least 1/4 of the GDP of India. Now, the beneficiaries of this are defense, electronics, processing, pharma. Speaking of, we've seen, the motto that the government is running is made in India, made for the world. Focus is not only domestic consumption, but also catering to the global demands. Not to address that, not to leave behind. I think if you look at the possibility of alternative manufacturing bases, to China, India looks to be one promising with the massive domestic demand itself of 1.3 billion and the working population, which is more than 50% of our population. So, that's what India is looking at. If we look at ease of doing business in India, India was at 142nd rank in 2014 when the Modi government took over, and has climbed up to the 63rd position lately. Of course, we're not one of the best, but we're improving. It's time that more improvements, more policy announcements are going to be announced, and likely will improve this further. Earlier, from the time earlier it used to take to set up businesses, it's much improved now. So moving on, if we look at other initiatives of the government on the next slide, India has a few other, the government has announced other schemes and initiatives to boost the Indian economy, and this is not now, but has been in place for some time, and the government is working on Skill India, which is aimed to generate more skilled employment and provide trainings and training centers to the unskilled labor and converting them to skilled employment. Digital India, I think this is one thing which we've seen massive changes in the government, not just at the administration end, but also the business end. The focus is clearly digitizing India. We've seen demonetization in past, which changed from physical money to digital money, and there are many such measures that the government has taken to fill up Digital India. Startup India, and this has been the talk of the world, is one of the best startup programs in the world, where there are incubation centers, there are specific guidances, there are fund of funds which will be available to startups, and a lot of new startups springing up. So it is likely to see more engagement in coming. If you look at another one which attracts a lot of foreign investment is the production-linked incentive scheme. So there have been several sectors in which production-linked incentive schemes have been announced, and very lately schemes have been announced in large-scale electronic manufacturing. And the government is likely to develop a land bank which will be made available to these things, to these initiatives. And apart from this, there were several incentives which are made available as part of this. So moving on the next slide is how India has collaborated with Australia, and if we look at roughly what is the investment of India has made into Australia and Australia has made into India, is almost nearly the same, about 10.5 billion, and I believe there's a great potential for further collaboration. India is regarded as an alternative manufacturing base in the world, and almost everybody is considering and if not an alternate, a parallel manufacturing setup in India. We've heard news of many multinationals entering into India. The government is in discussion with more than 300 companies to relocate, or maybe have alternate or supplementary manufacturing base in India. So the government has been proactive around this side, encouraging people, discussion around land, discussion around incentives, support, finance, various things. Not to mention the catering 1 million population and increase in educated middle class population. So higher spend in is what we know. Australia is amongst the 10 in the research and development and of scientific sector, fourth, which I believe look on to technology and innovation. I think Australia following to and in AI technology from government high speed in strength the IT infrastructure in India, and a lot of investment of the government in this. IP law strengthened over, and this could also help build effective technology partnership for the two countries. If we look at Australian IP owners, they could leverage on licensing deals with the Indian manufacturers who have advantage in terms of low labor cost and potential to leverage on marketing and branding of the local manufacturers. So a lot of licensing opportunities in India. We've also seen, one of the largest technology deals in India, the Reliance Jio. It has attracted investment worth over 13 billion US dollars in just about less than last 2 months, I think, and marquee investors like Facebook, etc., taking stake in Reliance. Global brands like Apple and Amazon have also committed to invest further in India, and which is an indicator of the potential that India has to offer, both in manufacturing as well as the demand side. So having said that, India would still need to incur significant investment in infrastructure, labor reforms, and I think this government is committed to doing so. Moving on, I think most of the people in the next slide, if you could see, when you try to set up in India, there are some challenges and some specifics that you need to cater to. And if you look at the next slide, it says what are the typical stages that you encounter and you look at while setting up in India. When you set up an entity in India, you need to make the right choice of the entity. Which type of entity India gives of entity, a limited liability partnership. You can do partnership in terms of etc. So what is the right entity set for you in India? Find the right location. I think that's really important, considering the country that is states in India. How do you really set up the right state, look at the incentives, etc. Optimum funding, get right. That's true. Debt, equity, how do you repatriate, etc. Repatriate, exit in. Getting and transfer is important, and all of you about important transfer in India. And compliance is a no-brainer. You need to get it right. Else, you could got
Okay, I've just lost sound from Jigar, and I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah. So thank you so much, Jigar. That's a great presentation, and we have a few questions that we'll try to deal with towards the end of the session if we can. And can I just mention to our organisers, we had some sound issues as well with Jigar during that presentation. So if you could have a look at that, that'd be great. Now, do we have Bill Cole ready to go? Bill, we don't seem to have your sound. Are you ready to start your presentation? Sorry, I didn't hear that. Is Bill ready to go? Do we have sound?
I'm unmuted now.
Great. You're now welcome to the team, and please go ahead with your presentation. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. 1,000 apologies for the seemingly endless technical difficulties that we've endured. I'd like to thank you for your attendance today, and in particular, thank Jigar and our friends and colleagues from India for joining us. Obviously, we can look inwards and talk about these matters, but the real strength of discussion, I think, as Stephen put it, the community of discussion is where we bring both sides of the opportunity together. A bit like business, if you think about it like that. The deal is struck between two minds meeting and coming up with new and creative ways to go forward, and hopefully you'll get a sense of that in our discussions today. Briefly, obviously, we've run a couple of these webinars before, seminars as they were at the time, where we gave, if you like, mostly big picture discussions around Australia and India. I will revisit some of those ideas initially, but I promise you to end up with some, if you like, the bookend discussions in all of this, which fundamentally is some of the ideas that a business needs to consider when considering trade, either from India to Australia or from Australia to India, and similar investment considerations. So, slide please. I suppose the most eloquent and detailed crystallisation of the work over the last decade or more between Australia and India has been crystallised in a document by an ex-Department of Foreign Affairs official, Peter Varghese, in his India Economic Strategy to 2035. This is from the Australian perspective, of course. And obviously, the timelines are extended. We're talking about 2035 in this report, but clearly the objects of the report are significant ones. To lift India into Australia's top 3 export markets, which in rough terms would mean something like a tripling or quadrupling of current trade. The second point, make India the 3rd largest destination in Asia for Australian outbound investment. This takes us, I suppose, closer to the idea of a more integrated economic approach between the two nations. And finally, the broader engagement with India in terms of extending beyond economic and business considerations to a true partnership and a strategic one in the region is the 3rd major objective. The report identifies a number of sectors where consideration was had around where the best collaborative approach could be had with Indian institutions and businesses, including education, energy, health, infrastructure, some of the things that Michelle has already alluded to. So no surprises there around the sector focus. And the, I suppose, big picture objectives at the top of the page are the ones that really inform these webinars and our attempts to broaden the discussion. Slide, please. And this is the perceived problem. Obviously, the data's reasonably old now, but I suppose proportionally still representative of what trade looks like between Australia and India. The bits that concern me are the I suppose modest amounts of STMs and ETMs, elaborately transformed manufacturers, and simply transformed manufacturers flowing between the two countries, and similarly the modest value of service trade and related activities. Commodities, I would say to you, rise and fall with various economic structures as they rise up in each other's countries, but the collaborations around manufacturing, technology, information, and services that Jigar was discussing in terms of some of the sectoral plans that India is rolling out, I think are fundamental areas. These are signposts to us of what we should consider. And as you can see, the pie charts aren't particularly impressive in that respect. Next slide, please. So the current, I suppose, formalized activity in order to achieve the goals of the report has been the ongoing discussions around the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, the CECA agreement, and its broad objectives, plugging into those more global views, was to expand good trading goods by reducing tax duties and non-tariff barriers. Pretty standard stuff for free trade agreements. To increase trade in services by having clear and transparent regulation and lower barriers to entry, and build investor confidence and protections. Jigar's comments around strengthened IP provisions in India, of course, are a fundamental foundation stone of that. Next slide, please. However, it's true to say that the current status of the CECA negotiations are probably not as encouraging as one would hope. From the outside, at least, they appear to be on hold. The talks are progressing at various levels. Obviously, we've got recent example of prime ministerial discussions, etc., but not specifically in the CECA process. There's reluctance around removing tariffs. Obviously, there are disparate tariffs between the two nations and various other border taxes. So revenue and protection considerations are coming into this. Movement of natural persons. Obviously, India has a significant interest in achieving preferential outcomes in terms of being able to move its workers, students, and service providers under the agreement, and that, of course, is a complex matter that is taking a long time to resolve. If I consider next steps, however, I go to some of the concepts that came out in the Varghese report, and a fundamental recommendation was that to the extent that high-level negotiations were going on at a government level and a bureaucratic level, the real foundation of changes, positive changes in Australia, India, economic relationships had to rely on business-to-business activity and relationships and the strengthening of these. Relationships and trust, I think, were the key themes that I took from it. And I would put to you that it's the position of BDO and East-West Advisors and other like-minded organisations that this business-to-business approach is actually the practical diplomacy that we need to take forward. Next slide, please. So words are cheap, and you've heard a lot of them from me. If I think about taking those ideas and putting them in the mind of a business that is interested in going to India, or an Indian business that is interested in going to Australia, there are basic questions that need to be considered, and these are no different to market entry into any different environment. So the fundamental step here I would put to you is not whether it's India or Australia, it's domestic versus international. That is the real question. So on that basis, there are some similarities that would occur in proper strategic planning for a business that is true for any market evaluation. And I've given a few of them here. Obviously, these are just broad brush approaches to considerations around market entry. In India, obviously, it has, these are all knowledge-based and judgment-based approaches to the problem. But what is the market? So we've heard from Michelle that, or at least in parenthesis, that states are important in India. They're not national. It's not a national market necessarily. It may be a state market or a city market or a constituency market. What is my supply chain? And I've got GSI, they're goods, services, or information, because I'll say to you that regardless of whether it's goods, a service, or an exchange of information, they all have their supply chain dependencies. If it's services, often it'll be the movement of persons. If it's information, it'll be the ability to connect computer to computer, not have interruptions, or not have data removed. If it's goods, it's the ability to physically move across borders. So what is that supply chain for your market? The next question, of course, is what are my costs and profits? Is the market valuable for all the effort that you're going to put in? And to do that, a lot of considerations need to occur and a lot of accuracy. How will I get paid? At the end of the day, the business activity above and beyond being a social one is actually an economic one, and businesses rise and fall on their ability to gain revenue. And what if things go wrong? How do we approach the failure of the relationship, which occurs from time to time in businesses? So if I think about the actions that need to be taken, if an Indian business wants to trade in Australia or an Australian business wants to trade into India, I need to understand where my product sits in my destination market. What is the need? What is the destination place? I then need to identify the type of delivery and the requirements around that delivery that I need to satisfy in order to get my product, physical or otherwise, to its destination. I then need to match the supply chain with the cost and price elements to do a proper price analysis. Similarly, I need to match supply chain activities, for instance, where I lose control of the goods and the buyer takes control of the goods, with a payment trigger. And how do I maintain that that will occur? Finally, identify mutually acceptable places and types of dispute resolution. So this is nothing unusual to you who are acquainted with ICC and other bodies in terms of determining a place of dispute resolution. It should be in any good contract of sale. So these are the kinds of things, I suppose, at the micro level that really bring alive this idea in Varghese report about bringing businesses to businesses. And what it means along with relationship is that there is a meeting of the minds about requirements, about the basics that underlie transactions and ongoing economic agreements. And I'd argue that it's these bookends, understanding the direction of policy and understanding the business requirements for transactions underneath all of that, that is a useful perspective for businesses to go forward with. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Stephen, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Bill. And can I say to the participants, I believe our polling is open now. You may have seen it come up on your screen, so if you get the chance, please respond because this gives us some valuable feedback. The first question was, are you currently doing business between Australia and India? Please give us a yes or no on that one. And we're also, as you can tell, we're a little bit over time, so we're going to go through till about 4:15, and I hope that's okay for all the participants and that you can stick with us because we have some more information and data to share with you. So thanks very much, Bill. Okay, I see on my screen the quick poll. Are you currently doing business between Australia and India? We've got 67 people saying, 67% are saying yes. And so part of today is how to help you do more. And also the 33% who are saying no, part of today is to help you get into doing business with India. So thanks for those responses. And I think now, no, we've got one more. Okay, so the next question on the poll was, do you see Australia, India as a growth path for your business? And again, think about this one, because if it is a growth path for us, how are we going to pursue it and how are we going to deal with all of the kind of issues and questions that Bill Cole was just raising in his presentation. So we do think optimistically that the opportunities are ahead. And okay, at this point, we're getting 100% of you saying, well, that's why you're at the webinar, isn't it? We're getting 100% of you saying, yes, it's a growth path. So this is a great signal to us and to each other, and perhaps an indicator to us, Bill and Mike, that we've got a lot of opportunity ahead with this form of communication. And the next question in the poll was, what is the biggest challenge you see with expanding your trade? And so you've got 5 choices there: movement of goods, lack of market knowledge, trade financing, taxes, and so on. Again, we'd appreciate your answers to those. That helps us, particularly in terms of how to shape future webinars and seminars in the post-COVID era. So thank you to those who've responded to the polls, and I'm hoping that if you haven't responded to the poll yet, that you certainly will. Okay, so here is an indication of what is concerning you. What is the biggest challenge? And it looks like lack of market knowledge is a standout there, 53%. So this is a bit of an indicator for all of us as to what the market is saying. Movement of goods, services, we've got 35. Trade finance, 24. Taxes and duties, 29. And the other category is 18. So a couple of big standouts there. And again, for us as information providers in this marketplace, you've given us an indication of the kind of things you'd like to see going forward. So now, as I said, we'll go till about 4:15. I think that's a good plan if everyone's agreeing with that, yes. And right now, let's give our attention to Mike Moignard. As I mentioned at the beginning, Mike was for 7 years Senior Trade Commissioner in Delhi. So he's a great resource for us in Australia. He's the Director of East West Advisors. And Mike, can we hear from you now?
Thanks, Steve, and welcome everyone. It's great to talk to you today, and thanks very much for attending our webinar. And certainly, East West Advisors very happy to be supporting this along with BDO. I'd like to start by recognising the elders, past, present, and future of the Wiradjuri tribe, upon whose land I am presenting this webinar. So as Steve has said, I'm Director of East West Advisors, and we are an advising consulting firm that really focuses on the Indian relationship with Australia. Next slide, Kate. And just to reiterate what Steve said at the start of this webinar, we do remember our friends and colleagues and contacts in India right now. This pandemic is still working through the world, and it is still far from over. So we are thinking of you, and we do hope that you are safe, and that you and your friends and your families have and continue to have good health. So we do remember you at this time. Next slide, Kate. Now, this is only a busy slide, but it's really basically I've only got 2 slides. So I'm going to talk to this one in some detail, and I want to talk about 3 aspects to your business and your business connections into India, and some of the things that we at East West Advisors think you need to think about. So the three areas around finance, around timing, and around relationships. So I want to start with the little green box on the left, and talk about 3 issues which really relate to what is happening in the current landscape, and what we expect that perhaps will continue as we move into what we're calling the new landscape, the new normal. And one of the things that we're seeing right now is reduced cash flow, and for both consumers and for your customers and for your business needs, we are seeing that everyone is really only spending on essentials. For consumers, they're spending because they've got less income in many cases, and others because they're concerned about what their future income stream will be. And for companies that have been through lockdown, as we have in Australia, and as we're seeing lockdown slowly be reduced in India, it's about costs. It's about maintaining and ensuring that your business can survive in the current climate. So what we're going to be seeing is, in the next few months, and who knows how long this will be, that essentials are really where you're going to need to look if you are wanting to sell into this market. And some of those essentials include health products, as we've mentioned, and that's come up nearly in every discussion. Food, with people staying at home, there's much more sales of and increasing sales of food, but also things like e-menus and food being delivered to home, and the supply chain as well, in terms of rethinking the costs and the ability to be able to move your goods through all your services. And it's interesting to note in the poll how important some of those issues are for companies at the present time. The second one is around capital investment, and I enjoyed Jigar's discussion around capital investment opportunities in India, but we are seeing capital investment around the world is being reduced at the moment, but it's nuanced, and there is still capital investment going on. Again, is based around the essentials of trade, and we look at things such as the things that we need and we will continue to need as consumers and as societies, and they relate around energy, but the future is going to be a green and sustainable energy. And so we're seeing, again, a nuanced investment opportunity looking at the energy sector. Food and agribusiness, particularly increasing the efficiency of our agribusiness sector, particularly in logistics and the supply chain. And I mentioned healthcare because it's not only in e-health and IT solutions, which both countries are now grasping with great verve, because this has been so important to the ability of both our nations to be able to support our needy and those in need of healthcare. But it's also preventative medicines, preventative cures, which I think is going to be an important part of an essential way of life in the future. And the third one is coming back to what both Jigar and Bill said around government stimulus. And that's going to be required for the next maybe 12, 18 months, maybe beyond. But these, again, are going to be looking at what is essential to support in the welfare of our people and for the growth of the economy. So we've seen in the summit between Prime Ministers Modi and Morrison a renewed interest in the Science Research Fund as an example of a way of enabling our best people in science and in our universities to work together to provide and hopefully develop new ways of using science and technology in support of the welfare of our peoples. There's a focus, as we've said, on e-health. Both governments are spending considerable amounts of money now on developing a better health system, which is related down to using IT and technology to maintain and build the relationship between patient and doctor. And then we've heard about Make in India, and I said again, Jigar gave us a very good understanding of the Make in India opportunity. Now look across to the right, and with a little timer there, I want to talk about timing because it's going to take time to rebuild both of our economies, and in particular, Australia and India are at different points on the virus curve. So the rebuilding that is being considered in the Australian economy now is something which will take some time to occur in India. So we hope that in 2021 and 22 we will start to see increased GDP growth, but it is going to take that sort of time. And so the challenge, I think, for us in business is to use this time to redefine our business model in this new landscape, to redefine our long-term cost structures, and something that is on the mind of a lot of people now is the changing nature of globalization. And in comparison to self-sufficiency, it is important for us as people interested in trade and investment that we maintain an open global and free trading system and not turn inwards. So the importance of us in business, I think in particular, is to ensure that our governments understand that the importance for both of our countries to have an open and free trading system. The second issue is around that idea of redefining our business and thinking about business transformation in the new economy and in the new landscape. So right-sizing your business model, particularly understanding what your customers' behaviour is doing and how it is going to change. Coming back to that concept of people buying essentials, being concerned about what do they need first before they move on to other parts of maybe things they were buying 3 months ago, they're not going to buy now. And maybe things in the next 6 months they'll be buying, which in fact will be important to the future of their well-being and their welfare. Online is obviously one of the things that's changed enormously, and the fact that we're doing this webinar and not face-to-face is just a simple indication of that. diversification again is something we need to think about, and as we transform our businesses, to understand diversification not only of our logistics and cost structures, but also our supply chains. And finally, the important thing is using this time to build and maintain our contacts and our connections, which brings me to relationships, and to reconnect and maintain and ensure that our relationships between Australia and India are maintained, to understand the culture. And this is Steve's wonderful area. It's always been important to understand culture, but in a Zoom technology, to understand that culture is even more important than it is now. So building trust online, to be transparent, to develop an online presence which tells more about you. So people, we in a face-to-face economy, we get to know each other by meeting, by talking, by hospitality. You've got to use things like LinkedIn and other online platforms to ensure that that human relationship that was so important to business is maintained. Kate, the next slide. So what are the next steps? As we see it from East West Advisors, there are three things we really need to look at here. We need to transform our businesses in line of the new landscape towards lean, online, insourcing, diversification. And that's going to take some time for us to really understand what that's going to mean in our own business. Secondly, we need to learn from our colleagues who are also searching for a way forward. And so webinars like this, but also other ways of keeping in touch with people in your industry, and those of us who are really passionate about the India relationship, to make sure that we are continually talking and working with each other. And finally, seeking assistance from those who have knowledge and experience in the market, and that's either at the advisor or consulting level, or at government, or at your own within your own industry. And it's interesting to see that one of the things that people are really understanding and needing to understand is market knowledge. How do I actually work in a market as varied and as important as India? These things that I think is the future for us. We are looking forward to being part of that journey with you. And I'll now pass back to Steve.
Okay, thanks, Mike. A lot of really, really good advice in that presentation. And I hope people were able to follow it all, and that we're ready to transform, learn and seek, which is a very nice finish to your presentation. So now I just want to check very quickly, if I may, with Bill. Are we coming to the conclusion now, or do we have the DFAT speaker as well?
Our guest from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade has been unable to join us, unfortunately, due to technology failure again, which is a great pity. Stephen, should I just make my comments about next steps around these presentations?
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will, of course, continue to, I suppose, provide high-level commentary around the progress of India-Australia economic relations as they progress. But it's been fed back to us that obviously at some point, businesses that are interested in progressing economic relations or transactional relations between Australia and India, and find new markets and find new customers and understand new processes, require far more detailed assistance. As a result, and in coordination with Jigar and Michael, we are intending to present a series of closed roundtables of maybe a maximum of 12 businesses, where we discuss in detail and in a confidential environment the particular needs of the businesses joining us, similarly on a one-on-one basis as necessary. So to the extent that that is interesting to you, you have all our details via this webinar, and please contact us. Alternatively, we will from time to time present schedules of the kinds of limited workshops that we'll be running. Thank you, Stephen.
Great. Thanks, Bill. This does bring us to the end of this webinar, and I want to sincerely thank our expert panelists, Michelle, Jigar, Bill and Michael, and also particularly to thank you, the participants, for being patient with us at the start and for sticking with us till the finish. We will be in touch with you after this, and as Bill mentioned, there are further plans by BDO and East West Advisors in terms of how to take this forward and how to keep the conversation going. So thank you, everyone. Stay well and stay safe, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Stephen.